One of the biggest shifts happening in AI right now is this move away from assistants that just talk about work to agents that can actually do the work. There's this really insightful post from Rooted Layers that lays out a blueprint for this transition, and that's what we're going to unpack today. It's a fundamental change in what these systems can be. And this quote, it just nails the core idea. We all know LLMs can reason, which is amazing. But what the post argues is that the real jump, the real leap, happens when that reasoning connects to a tangible, measurable action. That right there is the line between a passive tool and an active partner. So how do we get there? Well, this is where the blueprint comes in. The post gives us this fantastic mental model for thinking about how to build or even just understand these new agentic systems. So let's take a look at how it's structured. Okay, so first things first, the blueprint starts by asking a really basic but important question. What's the actual difference between a chatbot we're all used to and one of these so-called agents? It really all comes down to getting out of the world of conversation and into the world of action. Here's the definition the post offers. An agentic system doesn't just tell you how to file an expense report. No, it actually logs into the system for you, fills out the forms, and clicks submit. It's about performing work through these structured, software-based actions. And this definition is the foundation for everything else. So how do you actually build one of these? Well, the post argues that any team trying to build a reliable agent has to answer 3 fundamental questions. And look, getting these questions right is the difference between a cool demo that breaks easily and a system you can actually deploy in the real world. So here they are, the big 3. First, the surface. Where is this agent going to do its thing? On a website? Through an API? Second, the representation. How do we describe its actions in a way that's totally reliable? And third, the wiring. How do you create that stable loop where the agent can reason, act, and then see what happened? Okay, let's dig into that first one, choosing the action surface. This decision, where the agent is going to do its work, is absolutely critical, and it's full of some really important trade-offs. On one side of the spectrum, you've got these clean, structured APIs. They're stable, they're predictable, you can see exactly what's going on. Then, on the complete other end, you have the messy, chaotic world of graphical user interfaces, GUIs. An agent that works by clicking buttons can do almost anything. But man, is it fragile. One tiny change to a website's design and the whole thing can just fall apart. And what's so insightful about this framework is how it lays out that whole spectrum. It's like a hierarchy of reliability. The guidance is crystal clear. Always start with the most structured surface you can get, like a well-defined API. You only go down that list, things like browser automation, when you absolutely have to. The post calls this the Pragmatic Ladder of Reliability. Okay, so that naturally leads us to the second big question. Once you know where the agent will act, how do you represent what it's going to do? The post really emphasizes that this isn't just some minor technical detail. It's at the very core of whether you can trust the system. And here we have another ladder as a mental model. At the very bottom, you've got these vague, plain text commands. You move up a rung, and you get to actual executable code, which is better. But right at the top, you have what they call typed tool calls. These are structured commands with really clear parameters. That's the gold standard for reliability. So what's the big takeaway here? The whole game is about climbing as high up this representation ladder as you possibly can, getting from a fuzzy instruction like book a flight to a structured, verifiable command. That's how you build a system that's predictable and trustworthy. All right, this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. And honestly, it's the trickiest part, the wiring. How do you actually connect the agent's brain, its reasoning, to its hands and eyes, creating this feedback loop that actually works over and over again in the real world? Instead of just saying tool use, the post breaks it down into these 5 very specific challenges. First, the agent has to realize it even needs a tool. Then it has to pick the right tool, fill in all the details correctly, run it safely, and finally, understand the results. The thinking here is that you have to solve each of these smaller problems to get a reliable system. And this is such a critical point. We have to shift how we think about success. It's not enough for the final answer to just look good or for the demo to have the right vibes. We have to measure the process itself. Was the action correct? Was it safe? Can we reproduce it? In a production environment, vibes don't matter. Metrics do. And these are exactly the kinds of metrics that matter. We're talking about things like
What percentage of its actions actually succeed? How often does it pick the right tool? And this is a big one. How well does it recover when things go wrong? The Post makes a great point that a reliable agent isn't one that never fails, it's one that handles failure gracefully.
And using this whole framework, the Post points out a few common traps, anti-patterns, that builders fall into. Things like starting with the most fragile surface, the GUI, by default, or creating one giant octopus agent that has every tool and permission, or shipping something without any way to log and replay what happened. These are really practical, hard-won lessons. And this quote just brings it all home, doesn't it? The real sign that you have an agent isn't how smart it sounds. It's whether its actions are structured, measurable, and auditable. That's the real foundation of trust. So where does all of this leave us? It's not just a technical discussion, right? This blueprint is really a roadmap for building action into pretty much any piece of software. So if any app can become an agent that acts for us, what does that mean for the future of how we work?